Hi, Janeites. If you're listening, please follow and subscribe. It really helps to grow the podcast and for me to bring you more episodes. Hi, Janeites, and welcome to episode 27 of the What the Austen podcast, and Happy New Year! I hope you all had a wonderful winter break. To kick things off this year, I thought it would be a good idea to look at the ways in which Jane Austen's heroines have helped us through the years, what lessons we can take away from their experiences, and how they have shaped the way we deal with life. So joining me today is the absolute rock of the Jane Austen world, blogger and author, and the woman behind the presence Laughing with Lizzie, Sophie Andrews. So welcome, Sophie. I'm so excited to be recording with you.
Hi, yeah, it's really lovely to finally be on your podcast. And I love a lot of the episodes that you do, the recent series on the villains, Disney villains and all this. That was great. Enjoyed that. So thank you very much for inviting me on.
You're more than welcome. I'm so excited to have you with me. So a question that I ask all of my guests is, what got you into Jane Austen originally?
Well, I think I could say my mum sat me down when I was 9 to watch the 2005 Pride and Prejudice film. Watched that, loved it. Can't say I became a hardcore Jane Austen fan at 9, because I didn't. But it definitely got me on the route to, all the romantic comedies and that kind of genre. So then it really became a passion for me when I was 15, 16, and I was studying Pride and Prejudice for my school exams. I, up to this point, funnily enough, wasn't really a reader. I was a very active child and found sitting down reading a book boring, I think. I think it's just I hadn't found the right books. But I did read this because I knew I already liked the film and that kind of genre. And I think I read it in about a week, which for a non-reader is pretty quick, and for a first time Austen, because the language does take a little while to get your head around, and the length of sentences. And fortunately, I had an absolutely amazing English teacher who also absolutely adored Jane Austen, which meant when we were going through and studying it, she had a pupil that was loving what we were doing, whereas everyone else was, supposedly anyway, saying, oh, it's so boring, I don't like it, blah, 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 because, it's not cool to like Jane Austen, obviously. But she was great. I'd stay behind after lessons and chat to her and just fangirl, I suppose, really. And she was really supportive. It sort of encouraged me to look at other Austen novels and sort of helped me on that sort of journey. I then got online and discovered that, oh, look, there's a load of other Jane Austen fans out there, which I'm not on my own, which is how it felt. Me and the English teacher, that was it. And I did that through Goodreads and met loads of lovely people on there, one of whom then encouraged me to start a blog, and because I had lots to say about Jane Austen. And then that's how Laughing with Lizzie came about. And then I started posting like my school essays on there, edited a little bit to be a little bit less formal. And I just, then I was just devouring everything, all the novels, all the adaptations, like going back to like the 1960s and 70s. It was really hard to track down some of them, trying to find them on the deepest depths of Amazon or something. And then I started to look at the world of fan fiction, which is huge as well. Just absolutely everything. And that was in 2012. And then by when did I first start dressing up? 2015, 14, 15, I think I first started attending events and getting my own Regency costume. By then it was sort of too late, really. Couldn't go back from that point.
Full Jane out for life, right there.
Yeah, I'd gone too far.
I love that, though. It is amazing. Like, you have been on like such a journey with it, because I know obviously I already knew kind of your story because we'd already met up and we've discussed things in the past, but obviously having a love of Austen is kind of opened loads of doors. You made loads of friends in the community, as I have, and I think that's one of the amazing things about finding like the Jane Austen community through social media and everything. You think you're alone until you find it.
Yeah, It definitely feels like that. Goodreads was really opened my eyes because there were multiple Jane Austen groups with lots of people in them. But then when I got into Facebook, and suddenly saw there are, hundreds of groups on there, all around the world, it was just unbelievable how wide-reaching the love of Jane Austen is. And I have met so many wonderful people over the years. People my own age, like yourself, or you're younger, actually.
Slightly. Not by a lot.
I used to be the youngest when I first started this, and then, but then also, I've become great friends with people who are old enough to be my mother. But it's been such a lovely journey to just having that one real strong passion in Jane Austen is just enough to really connect you to someone very quickly. I think having that immediately in common just sets you up to be friends, really.
Yeah. I totally feel the same way. It's definitely, even though it feels like a massive community, it's still a tight community, and you can bond really quickly with other Janeites, which I think is one of the most magical things about it. So yeah. And it was actually reading your books, so Be More Jane and Be Your Own Heroine, which really inspired this episode topic. So both really good books, guys, and I'll obviously link all of that into the bio. But yeah, it was reading that I was like, oh, this would be such a good episode topic, talking about the lessons learned from Jane Austen characters. And then also, obviously, a more recent book is about, obviously Lizzie's in there, but it's other heroines as well. So what we're going to do today is we're going to work through the heroines and basically just talk about what lessons we've learned from them based off their strengths, but also, mistakes and weaknesses, because lots of lessons can be learned from people's mistakes. That's for sure. Yes. So yeah. So to kick things off then, I thought we could start with Elizabeth Bennet, someone you're very familiar with.
Sophie. You're very familiar, and you're starting with the best there, so you're down from there.
Thanks. Yeah. Sometimes I try not to start with Pride and Prejudice. Please stick around, everybody. Don't just leave after Lizzie.
There is that. Yeah, there is that.
Oh dear, so funny. So some things that I was thinking about when I started thinking, what have I learned from Lizzie Bennet, is I think the main lesson I've learned, and something I've definitely carried through life, is the importance of standing up to people who think they're kind of superior to you or above you, and calling people out. I think maybe bully is too strong a word, but I think in real life, you can come up with these bullies and toxic people, and I think standing up to people is very important, and I think that's something I definitely learned from Lizzie.
Yeah, 100%. I think in a way bully isn't too strong a word, because obviously I think bully, you get the associations with like being bullied at school, which I was, possibly why I look up to Lizzie, because she did stand up to them, whereas I did not. So she was someone I wish I was, I think, in regards to that. But I think you still get these kind of difficult situations in adulthood as well, like in workplaces, if you've got a manager perhaps who's, not very good at managing people, and it can feel a bit like you're being bullied, for want of a better term. But like Caroline Bingley and Lady Catherine, they definitely fit that category. Just the way that they look down on Lizzie, they have that whole, Caroline is talking behind her back, Lady Catherine just says it to her face, but both are, it's sort of that bullying kind of behaviour that you see. But Lizzie, fortunately, is able to stand up to it and to defend herself, which I think is really admirable.
Yeah, 100%. She's incredibly brave and courageous, a true Gryffindor. And there's a quote that you pulled out in your book that really showcases this, and it says,
Absolutely.
"There is a stubbornness about me that never can bear to be frightened at the will of others. My courage always rises at every attempt to intimidate me." And I just really love that. And I think it's such a good lesson to learn from a young age and then to carry with you through life. Because like you said, work environments, it's very easy to be around, toxic managers, and to learn how to stand up for yourself.
Yeah, 100%. And like, as you said, I think the workplace is a very good example of, you know, in 21st century living, because you have that hierarchy. I think it can get into some people's heads, the fact, like, I'm quite, you know, by my role at my job, I don't have toxic managers, I'll just say that now, I love my job, but you know, I'm a low rung, as it were. I'm sort of assistant level, and then you get managers and then head ofs, and even going up right to the top with like CEO. So you automatically have that, and that kind of, in a negative work environment, just lends itself to that sort of superiority, them feeling superior anyway, and that kind of bullying, you will do what I say kind of attitude.
Yeah, absolutely. And you know what? I feel like it was easier for me to take on board these lessons for Lizzie when I was younger. Like, I remember, I'm not necessarily really outgoing person. I can be quite shy, especially in scenarios that I'm not used to. But I remember one time I was on this trip and I saw this guy was being awful to this girl publicly, like in front of a group of people. And I don't know what came over me. Lizzie came over me, and I just stood up and I just said, you can't treat this person like this, you know, but you need to stop. And I just walked out with her and I was like, you don't need to put up with this. And I thought,
good for you,
like,
that's great.
I think growing up with heroines like Lizzie, it does instill that kind of the strength in you, because it's something that you can aspire to, and you can say, you know what, it's not even just standing up for yourself, it's standing up for others who maybe can't. I think it's super important.
Yeah, no, and I think, yeah, good on you, because it's, you know, those kind of situations, you see them happening all the time. I suppose Lizzie inspires you to be like, yes, I can help out here. But in the way that often we are told in society, it's almost that I think we're kind of, it's instilled in us that you shouldn't be interfering in these kind of things, and, you know, you don't know what might happen and all of this. I think they sort of, that kind of attitude encourages indifference in a way. Yes. To those kind of situations, and I think it's sad.
It's not my problem. That kind of mentality.
Yeah, not my problem. Just pretend it's not happening. But actually, you know, in a lot of situations, that's definitely not the right attitude, and that's why I think you'd look to Lizzie, not to society.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's a great lesson we can take from Lizzie based off her strengths. Is there anything else based off Lizzie's strengths that you want to talk about before we kind of get on what we learn from her mistakes?
Yeah, she definitely made mistakes. Like we all the best people make mistakes. No one's perfect. I do admire Lizzie's loyalty. Again, that's a Gryffindor trait, isn't it? Bring us back to Harry Potter. Mm-hmm. Not that we're both Harry Potter fans or anything. But I think,
as I'm sat here with my Hogwarts jumper on.
And we've both just been to Warner Brothers. Oh, yeah. But I think she is very loyal, even when, you know, she's loyal to the wrong cause, like when she has the loyalty towards Mr. Wickham. But I think that even when it goes wrong, that sense of loyalty and strength of feeling about something, the way she stands up to Lady Catherine when they're, you know, insulting her family, she stands up to Darcy with that awful first proposal, and showing that she's loyal to her family. Yeah. And she knows her family's not perfect. Like, she gets fed up with her mum and her little sisters all the time, but they're still her family, and she's still going to be loyal to them. And I think you see that a lot. And like with Charlotte Lucas as well, she really struggles with the idea of her, you know, going off to marry Mr. Collins, but she does then come round and she goes to visit and she stands by her friend.
Yeah, I love that. That's so true. She is a loyal friend, very protective of her friends. Like, obviously Wickham at one point is her friend, and even though she puts her faith in the wrong person, she is very protective over him, and she's right on there going for Mr. Darcy about it, because, you know, it's the way she sees it is Wickham's a good person and her friend, and she will stand up for anybody who she has that connection with. So I think it's, obviously it's not always placed on the right people, but I think it's a very good quality to have. I think people should be loyal to their friends and stand by them.
Yeah, definitely.
But that does bring me on to Lizzie's mistakes, which I think we can learn a lot from this as well. So the main thing that I learned from Lizzie and her mistakes is not to jump to conclusions or judge people too quickly. So I think, especially if you're going to be like Lizzie and be really outspoken about it, because it can lead to a lot of embarrassment if you're wrong. So I think obviously we've already spoken about the Darcy and Wickham situation, and I think that's a very good example of that, of jumping to conclusions. And also you were saying about the Charlotte situation. Again, she's very quick to judge Charlotte for her choices. And it takes time. She has to sit with it for a while to then actually realize, for Charlotte, that was the right choice. And maybe you can't judge people based off your own opinions on how you want to live your own life.
Yeah, absolutely. It definitely takes her time to accept it and understand it. And I think, you know, Charlotte even sort of says to herself, you're not going to really be able to understand why this is the right thing for me and that I'm okay about it, because Charlotte knows Lizzie so well in all of the conversations they've had about, like, you know, only marry for love and all of this. So I think it's difficult for Lizzie, but she does come round eventually. And I think I can see it from Charlotte's point of view, but I can also see why Lizzie's a bit like, whoa, what are you doing? Because it's her best friend. She wants the best for her best friend. Which, in the situation that Charlotte's found herself, this is the best. It's just Lizzie can't see that yet. And in Lizzie's mind, this is the worst possible thing that Charlotte could be doing, because, you know, who wants to marry Mr. Collins? Kind of her reaction is out of love for her friend, but it's out of love for her friend without actually taking into consideration Charlotte's sort of situation and point of view and her own feelings on it.
Absolutely, 100%. And then the Darcy and Wickham situation, I mean, obviously jumping to conclusions and buying into Wickham's story straight away before kind of looking at both sides. And I think Lizzie can be very black and white sometimes and not look at the grey area too much. But obviously sometimes the grey area is where the truth lies. So
it's because it's a lot of the time the black and white's easier, isn't it? You want, you know, in a situation like, well, he's good and he's bad. And that's just easier to kind of, you know, sort of understand and deal with. And I think, I mean, I can't remember. I think about this a lot. I can't remember. Well, actually, probably because I had seen the film before I had read the book, so I already knew the story. But I'd be really interested to know if anyone on first reading Pride and Prejudice, or even watching it, do you go along with Lizzie and Wickham? Are you at all suspicious of Wickham? Or, you know, and does the Darcy being the goody come as a shock like it did to Lizzie? Or are you sitting there going, Lizzie, what are you doing? Why is this, like, person you've just met telling you this really, like, get the violins out sob story? You know, and I can't remember whether I was suspicious of him or not. Obviously, I was, but that's, I think, because I already knew what was going to happen. I can't remember my initial thoughts on it, which is really annoying, because I'd be really interested to know what I thought.
I know, so would I. Honestly, I would give anything to be able to read it for the first time again and or at least experience what it was like when I read it for the first time again, just to know whether or not I fell for Wickham. But then I always think that about, like, Willoughby as well. Like, did I fall for him? Did I buy into this relationship? But yeah, I totally agree. It's a shame once you've read it so many times, then you can no longer have that first experience again. But that was everything I had to say for Lizzie. The first strength that I have on the list for Anne Elliot is basically don't let others dictate your happiness, whether that's romantically or with a job, say, or with friends. I think Anne learns through losing Wentworth the first time that she needs to stand her ground more. And not let family dictate, you know, what her path to happiness is. And I think that's such an important lesson to learn, not even just by family, by friends, by society in general. You have to carve your own path. And also not let your youth kind of cloud, like mistakes of your youth kind of cloud your future.
Yeah, absolutely. Especially in, you know, in today's world, society, media, kind of the expectations that are put on particularly young women is just awful, really, and very, very difficult to kind of go against the grain, essentially, or going against what, you know, oh, well, this magazine says I ought to be a size 8 and I should wear clothing like this and I should have had a boyfriend by now, or any of those kind of things, which you know, when you get older, you're just like, what, why, what? No, it's up to me when I do what I do. But when you're at that kind of young adult age, you're so impressionable. Like, I mean, because Anne Elliot was 19 when she was persuaded not to marry Wentworth. And it is such a difficult age to hold fast to what you believe in and what you believe is right for yourself.
Yes, absolutely. It is super hard. And I think obviously with time, Anne's able to see past that and look back and think, actually, I could have chosen better for myself than the decisions that my family made, and I would have been happier to be with Wentworth than without him. But I think as well, what's really interesting is I think the narrative makes a point to say that Anne didn't blame herself for being guided by her family, but then at the same time, the narrative always also makes a lot of references to how it clouded every enjoyment of youth. She had an early loss of bloom and spirits because of her choice. And I think with Anne, there's a real argument to say sometimes you have to look back on the mistakes or the decisions you made when you were younger and forgive yourself for them so that you can move on as an adult and grow from it, as opposed to hold on to it forever.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, when you look at it from Lady Russell's side, in the reasoning to her saying, persuading Anne to break it off, you kind of, I think I feel a little bit of sympathy for her, because in what we literally were just talking about with kind of loyalty and looking out for people, she thought what she was doing, he was a young sailor, no money, no guarantee that he was going to make his name in the Navy. She was doing what she thought was best for, her, because Anne is definitely her favourite of the three Elliots.
Understandably.
And it is what she thought was right. Well, yeah, easy decision there. But I think so. I do feel a little bit of sympathy for Lady Russell, and then also for Anne for going along with it, and as you say, being persuaded. And I think then when you have made that kind of decision, it's the not beating yourself up for the rest of your life about it is important.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think sometimes this is why I do think Mr. Elliott's a villain, absolutely, but I think he plays a really vital role for Anne in coming to terms with that, because I think he shows Anne that she still has great qualities, she's still a real catch, and she still deserves happiness. Not necessarily with him, but I think Anne then takes back control and thinks, you know what, I'm not going to keep beating myself up about this. And when Wentworth's next, in my area, I'm going to, speak to him like a normal human being now and stop holding on to the past, which is kind of making me feel like I can't approach him.
Yeah, I've never really thought of him like that, but he definitely does, because you can tell that he's, he does find Anne, quite an, in an enticing possibility, and he thinks she's still pretty and witty and, a catch, as you say.
But is there other lessons that you felt that you've really learned from Anne Elliot?
I think I find her very interesting. And when I have ever done like a poll about people's favourite novel or heroine, it's really interesting how many people say that it used to be Lizzie or Pride and Prejudice, and that as they've got older, it's become Persuasion and Anne. And I think as you go through life, you perhaps come to appreciate and understand more that whole second chance sort of situation that Anne finds herself in. And I think it speaks to people more perhaps when they've been through similar sort of situations where they've lost something that they wanted hasn't happened. That kind of theme of hope, or half agony, half hope, that again you become to appreciate when you get older. Here's me, I'm about to turn 27, so she's my last hope of heroine, because I've run out of other Austen heroines. So I think, as you do, obviously in today's world, 27 is nothing. But I think even if you were 40 something and hadn't found love and weren't married or whatever, I think someone like Anne could totally be like, well, she did it. Why, I'm still fine, I'm still good. Why can't I still get whatever I want, even if that, doesn't have to just be like a relationship, but, anything in life, like a career, whatever you wanted. Just look at Anne and you can do it, really.
Yeah, I love it. But that brings us on to a character that I guess maybe kind of falls into that category as well, having an awful family of sorts, and that is Fanny Price. So Fanny's the one that I struggled with the most to find strengths. Everyone who listens to the podcast knows I have a complicated relationship with Fanny.
And I can understand it. Like, when people ask me, you know, like, how would I rank in favourites, you know, all the novels, I'm always like, well, P&P's at the top, Mansfield Park's at the bottom, the others change around in between, but Mansfield Park is always at the bottom. And I think that a lot of the reason to do with that is Fanny Price. I think I find her more difficult to relate to, and as you just said, like, find those kind of strengths in her to inspire you, I suppose.
Yeah. I feel like there's a really good lesson to be learned from Fanny, that basically don't forget that you're the heroine of your own life. Yeah. Because if you don't reach for the things that you want, if you don't speak out, if you don't take center stage in your story, your happiness can very much slip past you, and someone else can take it. Obviously, we see that with Fanny and Mary Crawford. Mary Crawford is very outspoken. She's willing to go for what she wants, and she ends up taking Edmund for a lot of the story. And Fanny, and what I find with Fanny as well, what infuriates me, she's jealous of the situation, but I'm like, Fanny, you didn't say anything. You didn't do anything.
No.
So you don't really have any ground to stand on.
Pretty much, I'm like, yeah, you haven't, he doesn't know that you're, you know, that you like him and that you're really, really jealous right now, like, because you're not giving him any indication of this. Yeah, it is different. Like, a lot of people, I've seen the argument of the fact that, you know, Mary Crawford is the heroine of Mansfield Park in a way. And, you know, you can kind of understand where that's coming from, because she is, you know, she's more Lizzie-like, I suppose, because she's outspoken. Obviously, she has her downfalls, and especially, you know, towards the end.
I mean, there are some good things about Fanny. I think she has got a strong moral compass, and I think she's extremely loyal. I don't think anybody would be as loyal to the Bertrams as Fanny is. She is devoted to that family, even though they treat her really awfully. She feels very committed to them.
In a way, you can forgive a lot of Fanny's kind of the fact that she doesn't speak up, because of the situation that she's grown up, you know, with having Mrs. Norris on her case all the time. And I think if that's how you've been brought up since you were pretty young, you're going to really struggle, because it's habit by then to just be like, right, I'm just a quiet mouse in the corner that can't say anything. So I think in a way you can kind of forgive her willingness to just let people walk all over her, and like having complex relationships with people who you think are trying to be your friend, but you sort of also don't like, and is kind of like rivalry going on. I think you can get that today with friends that you know that you've got, and especially how I think friends you might have had when you were younger, how relationships can change, which I think you do see throughout the course of Mansfield Park. And Mary Crawford in the, you know, when she shows her hand about the situation with her brother and Mariah, it's that okay, we were friends, we had some sort of relationship, but actually no, I don't want that now, we're both different people, and kind of moving on from it. And I think that is something that is a good lesson to be learnt, and that it's okay to do that.
I love that. 100%. I think that's a really important lesson to learn. And I think one of the beauties of growing up and becoming an adult is starting to realize that you know, you can let go of friendships if they no longer serve you, and you can still appreciate them for what they were, but know that that person maybe doesn't have a place in your life anymore. That's a great one.
I think it's difficult. I think because, you know, you have the friends for life, you know, when you're at school, and BFFs and all this, and even like it's okay to, if you've got family connections that don't work, you know, you're always brought up that, you know, family is family, etc. But actually, if you've got someone who's like toxic in your life, and the relationship that you've got just isn't positive for either of you, then actually, whether you're just friends or actually even if they're family, like, it's okay to step back and be like, let's just meet at family functions, you know. And I think in a way, Fanny is is a bit of an example of that, because I think she does get to a point of, what's the word I'm looking for?
Control, in a sense, I guess.
Yeah.
Like maybe we could make the argument that she actually does have more control in the situation than maybe surface level we give her credit for.
Yeah, and I think you also see the way that Sir Thomas Bertram changes in the way that he views Fanny. The fact that he's like, oh, she's actually a really lovely young woman, and the way that he changes as well, I think goes along with when Fanny is eventually becoming more confident and saying, well, I do have some power and some control, and I'm just going to do what I want to do. And it takes her a long time, and it takes him a long time to sort of realize it. But I think it's when his own daughter Maria makes that huge misstep and really ruins the reputation of their family, that he sees how good Fanny is, basically.
Yes, and I think thinking of her in comparison to Maria, you can really say that Fanny stays true to herself throughout the novel, whereas Maria is very false. Like, she's totally fake with the people around her. People give her multiple chances to break her relationship with oh my god, what's his name?
Rushworth.
Rushworth, yeah. He gives her opportunities to break that off. She's not tied to Rushworth at all. And she still says no. Like, genuinely, she's very false and fake throughout, whereas Fanny, like, conversely, is the same person throughout.
Yeah, no, she definitely is. And I think, that definitely is a strength, is in staying true to yourself, even under the most difficult circumstances. Like when Sir Thomas is saying, well, Crawford wants to marry you. This is great. Fantastic. Go for it. And she still says no, even though she knows as you said, how loyal she is to the Bertrams and how much it will upset them. And it does really upset Sir Thomas, and he does not understand it. But she still stays true to herself, even in those most challenging of circumstances. So I think that's definitely something that is worth looking to Fanny to kind of see the
positives in Mansfield.
Yeah, I think, but like looking to Fanny and saying, when you are true to yourself, like, it does come out good, like, it's worth it, I suppose,
Yeah, I think Austen does celebrate that, if you're authentic, that does pay off eventually. And I
definitely.
think she shows that anyone who's false and fake and, is trying to
get it in the end.
Yeah, they get it in the end. Yeah, absolutely. I love that though. I feel like there was so much to say there about Fanny, which obviously initially I didn't think about, but I think you made some fantastic points there, and I might leave this episode thinking that I've learned the most from Fanny than anyone else. But the next person I have on the list is Eleanor Dashwood. So do you want to give me some of your thoughts on Eleanor first?
Yeah, Eleanor is, I've always found Eleanor and Anne Marianne, sort of their relationship, really interesting. When I was growing up, I think my sister was very much an Eleanor and I was more a Marianne. And then as we got older, I'm the Lizzie and Eleanor, and my sister is the Jane. And I've always made, in a way, feel a little bit like Lizzie is a older, more mature Marianne, and similar with Eleanor and Jane. I don't know why I've always made that sort of connection, but I think the Jane is, she's still soft-spoken and quite sort of will do what she's told sort of attitude, but not quite as much as Eleanor can be. Eleanor is too quiet and too internal. So I find it interesting to see. That's not what you asked me about, but I've always found it interesting to sort of think about those four heroines in that sort of way.
Yeah, I can definitely see connections between Jane Bennet and Eleanor. And I think one of the strengths that I found in Eleanor really plays to that, because I think the way that Eleanor deals with Lucy Steele is really interesting, because on my latest reread, I really realised how aware Eleanor is of what Lucy's doing.
Yeah.
And she makes the conscious decision to say, like, I know what she's doing here, but I'm not going to give her the satisfaction of her being toxic to me and her being satisfied with me being upset. And I think should Jane experience another Caroline Bingley, that is the exact approach Jane would have had as well. Like, having been around Caroline and learning from that, I think she would have approached a situation like Eleanor does with Lucy Steele should she experience it again.
Yes. No, I think it's definitely a strength in that way, because Lucy Steele she is just the worst, isn't she? But Eleanor, despite the fact that she is distraught that Edward is unavailable and is all this big secret that he didn't tell her, she can still say, okay, well, we're just going to bury that emotion and just deal with what's in front of me, which is Lucy trying to make me upset. And then, no, you're not having that satisfaction, as you say. And that's definitely something which is a valuable sort of, in really rubbish situations that you can find yourself in, if you've got someone like that you can still stay strong and stay not positive, because it's not positive, but sort of,
I guess it's like boundaries, isn't it? Like, form boundaries against people.
Yeah, and it's sort of keeping people in their place. You say, well, I know what you're trying to do, but I'm not going to let you.
Absolutely. I 100% think that's the case, and I think it's a great thing to learn from Eleanor. She's not like Marianne and Elizabeth that she jumps right in and calls it out openly. She knows it in her mind. She's like, I'm not going to call this person out, but I know how to put my boundaries up so that you don't affect me too much, because I recognize you're a toxic person.
Yeah.
And I think that's such a valuable thing to have.
Yeah. And she knows that calling her out is just not going to be, it's not going to help anything at the time, which again is very strong, because it would, that must be so hard. I mean, I know, because I'm more of a Lizzie, I would really struggle to be like, oh, well, I know this information and I'm just like, I need to tell someone and be like, she's horrible. And,
or just tell her to her face, you're a horrible person.
Well, yeah. And that, just be like, no, you're a bitch, go away,
Yeah, literally. I feel like we all feel like that about Lucy.
Yeah. And I think it's very strong. I think there's a little bit of keep your enemies closer going on, where Eleanor thinks, one, so she doesn't upset things, this is what she's just going to have to endure, but she will, like you say, set those boundaries. But also, in a way, not that it would be beneficial to her, I mean, in the end it did turn out to be, but that perhaps it's better to have Lucy still sort of supposedly on her side and talking to her, confiding in her, in a way that it might be better to do that than just, call her out and become open enemies, be secret enemies.
Yes. Yeah, I love that, because at least she has all the information then. Something that I also learned from Eleanor, which kind of falls more on Eleanor's mistakes, I would say, is probably not very healthy to bottle up all your emotions. I really think that it's important to talk about your feelings with people and let it out, because I think we really see with Eleanor, there comes a point where she just completely crashes because she's been holding on to all of this for so long. And I think something all of us can really learn from Eleanor is finding someone you can confide in is super important.
Oh, huge. Which is what I love between Lizzie and Jane, because they do confide in each other. Yeah, because 100%, if because I'm very guilty of that when going through my childhood. Put it on a shelf, keep putting it on a shelf, you think about it. One day that shelf will fall down. And I think that is what happens to Eleanor. And sort of conversely, Marianne learns that she should be putting some things on a shelf and is a little bit too out there all the time. And they I think they learn from each other that one's being too bottled up, the other one's been way too open. I think we're very, that's a particularly British thing, I think. I think we're very good at sort of, brave face, sort of
stiff upper lip.
Yes, that's the phrase. Carry on, keep calm and carry on kind of attitude.
Absolutely. And I really appreciate that now as a society we're starting to talk about it more and just saying to people, it's good to talk about your feelings, it's good to talk about what's going on, because we all experience hard times, and we even just general life emotions, things that aren't even that big of a deal, it's still good to talk about them with somebody. So I think from Eleanor, I really recognize that you have to let these things out before they get overwhelming. But even though we've already mentioned a couple of bits on Marianne then, just because we're in the same novel, one of the strengths that I really found from Marianne is not changing who you are just because others may think that you're like a little bit too out there or a bit too different or a bit, extreme in their eyes. And I think obviously Marianne doesn't outwardly necessarily say that. She just goes on about all the things that are important to her that might not be important to anybody else. But I think Brandon makes a really good point of this to Eleanor when Eleanor's saying like all the things that Marianne should change to kind of be a better person, and Brandon says like, no, don't desire that, because what she has, that there is a lot of like amazing stuff in who she already is. And obviously Brandon has feelings for her, so has a different approach to it. But I think that there is something to be said of, even if you maybe are not exactly what everyone else thinks is the, how you should be, don't change who you are to fit into a mold.
Yeah, definitely. And I think obviously, Marianne is an extreme, but definitely I say it is nice when Brandon's saying, don't change it, because if you do change it, it's difficult to go back again. If you then have changed and abided by what society says you should be like, it's very difficult to then go back to what you were before, which I think is sort of what Brandon is trying to say to Eleanor, that if you try and force her to change, then she'll just be lost.
And I think that's true. You can lose your identity if you try and change yourself too much, for sure.
Loads today when people saying that, they lost who they were and they didn't know, if you get stuck in the rat race and saying society says we have to do this and I have to do that, and getting too caught up in it all, you're like, well, who am I? What do I like to do?
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And I think the relationship between Brandon and Marianne really shows that you will find the people who love you for who you are. I mean, obviously, I feel like the Jane Austen community is a stance of that. I don't know about you, Sophie, but I've definitely experienced people being like, oh, you're like that weird Jane Austen girl, or you're obsessed with Jane Austen, or, all of those things we've probably all had, guys, in our life. But at the end of the day, we have a fantastic community of people, and we all love each other for our mutual love of Jane Austen. And I think in life, you will find the right people, and you'll find the people who love you for who you are.
Oh, yeah, definitely. I've always, it did take me a long time because like when I first started my blog on Laughing with Lizzie, my persona was just Jennifer Ely. I didn't have my face out there, and it was because, I was only 16. I was at school, and it was just uncool to like Jane Austen and all of this. And it took me a while to grow in that confidence to own my love of Jane Austen. But now I'm like, I don't care who knows, I don't care who sees me. And to be honest, if you're going to be my friend, then you're going to have to accept that this is what I do. And if you think it's weird, then we probably shouldn't be friends. I suppose it's not, don't hide any part of your personality.
Yeah, I love that. So I think another lesson that we can learn from Marianne is not every person will be right for you romantically. Obviously, in Marianne's case, she's looking for a man, but I think for whomever you're interested in, this point stands.
Oh, well, yeah. Yeah, unfortunately. Be yourself 100%, but be careful that the man that you're with is not moulding his personality to match yours, which he does definitely at times. I love poetry. Oh, I love poetry too. I was like,
it makes me think about Frozen with Hans and Anna, when the song "Love Is an Open Door,"
yes.
And he's like, I love that we finish each other's sandwiches, and it's like, and he keeps copying what she's saying.
Oh yeah, I was gonna say that. I was like, what? No, you weren't. I think, in particular, in the world of like dating, that is very common. Especially in like today, because the world of dating is a lot of online dating, all these various apps that you've got, and to be honest, it'd be quite easy to just
pretend to be someone else.
You say, if you're trying to get to know each other, yeah, exactly, yeah. I mean, you could literally pretend to be someone else, have someone else's photo and everything, but it's very easy to just go along with what other people are saying, even if that is not what you actually.
And I think actually what Marianne learns is, you don't have to have exactly everything in common with the perfect partner. Actually, sometimes
compromise.
Yeah, sometimes it's having differences, and it's just your core values that need to be the same. Which I think for Brandon and Marianne is, being true to yourself is a core value they both share. In the end, that's more important than the kind of superficial things like do we read the same books, or do we listen to the same music, or all of those kind of things.
You can have the same core values but have different temperaments. and on the whole, even with friendships as well. Like my best friend Abby. Hey Abby, I know you'll be listening.
Hi
Abby. She, like, we have a lot in common. We've met through Jane Austen and we have a lot in common. But we also have loads of things that are quite different, like just sort of various attitudes towards things, and things that she enjoys are very different, but it just means we have more things to talk about. And I think that's a much healthier relationship than one that like directly mirrors, like, you know, it's almost like you're then dating yourself.
Yeah. Something incredibly creepy about that.
Yeah. And I just don't think that's ever going to work, really, on the long term.
Are you happy to move on to Catherine Morland?
Yeah. Oh, Kathy, bless her.
We love Catherine. Okay, so one of the positives that I put down for Catherine, and something that I really love about her is obviously she has a huge passion for reading. She loves books. When she's talking about reading Mysteries of Udolpho, she says, "Oh, I am delighted with the book. I should like to spend my whole life in reading it." And I think a passion for reading really comes through in this novel. And I think that's such a wonderful pastime to have, or to feel this passionate about anything that you enjoy.
Yeah, I think, that strength of passion, I think that's a lot of what Tilney finds endearing about her, is the fact that she's like, oh, like, you know, it is a bit, you do experience that when, like, when you're growing up, if you become passionate about something, you're all in. And like, for, you know, and then a couple of months down the line, you probably don't like it anymore, and then you'll find something else and you're just like, oh my gosh, it's my absolute world. When you get, I mean, it happened to me with Jane Austen.
I was just about to say, I was like, do you mean like us and Jane Austen?
Like, yes, but Jane Austen's a little bit different, that endures. And I think Tilney loves seeing it in her.
Yeah. And I think just in general, you know, loving things like reading, and I know a lot of people listen, like part of the Bookstagram community, and you know, it's amazing if you can find things like that you love and you can get lost in another world. And I know for Catherine that sometimes doesn't work out because she gets too lost in the Gothic world.
Oh yeah, 100%. And I think having that passion and I suppose wanting to, you know, completely lose yourself in another world and let your mind sort of go wild, and all that sort of creativity and imagination, obviously for her goes a bit too far or into the wrong novels, but definitely is something that we should do in our own lives, because I think, you know, you can't go through life without at some point, you know, wishing you were somewhere else, wishing you were someone else even. And I definitely had that, and Jane Austen was 100% my escape. And I think it's important to, you know, you as a human kind of having that wish to escape and to let your imagination run wild.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think even though, like you were saying, Catherine does have the weakness of being naive, I think something else that I really learned from Catherine is something that we've already talked about actually, and that's ability to let go of toxic people once you realise they're toxic. Because I know by the end of the novel, yes, I know Catherine's naive with Isabella, but by the end she is just like, Isabella's done. She was like, I'm ashamed of ever loving her.
Yeah.
Goodbye.
Yeah. And it's absolutely brilliant that she just is like, nope, dropping her right now. It's really admirable that she does, when she does realise how naive she's been and how wrong she's been, she kind of admits that she was wrong. She doesn't try to go, oh well, she was nice to me at the start or anything. She goes, no, she's just been bad the whole time, hasn't she? And I need to not talk to her anymore. And you know, she does. She just owns it. Really, she owns her mistake.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's kind of a running theme with Austen's heroines. I think we're finding is that kind of learning from your mistakes and letting go of toxic people in your life. Both very, very valuable things to learn in life, guys.
Yeah.
If you've not already, like, some people will be here like, yes, Izzy, wise, you know. Do you want to move on to Emma Woodhouse, the last heroine on our list?
Yeah. Oh, Emma, Marmite. You love her or you hate her?
I actually love Emma, but I
love her. I love her.
I do love her.
I love her.
And I do think, I know she does make mistakes, but I think she has the makings of a great leader in society. And I think that's something that's there are valuable lessons to be learned from it in that, and how she's able to inspire people around her, even if she does it in the wrong way. She has like quite a good skill set in that.
Yeah, definitely. You can almost see her, like, I think, you know, in a modern world, I feel like she'd be a female MP trying to run for Prime Minister or something, or for President or something, you know, just in the way that she goes about things. And a lot of the time, everything that she does come from the heart. Like, even what she's doing with Harriet, you know, she's doing what she thinks is right for Harriet. She's not doing it out of spite. All the things that she does get wrong. I mean, you may say, other than, you know, what happens with Miss Bates on Box Hill, but that's kind of under the influence of Frank Churchill's.
And I think we've been there, right? When we've been younger, it's so easy to be influenced by people around you, and you can make mistakes and later cringe and think, my gosh, I never would have treated someone that way. And we see that with Emma. Like, she doesn't sit on it and think, I was so right, I'm so glad I said that. Like, as soon as Mr. Knightley calls her out, she's like, I'm so embarrassed. How do I make amends for this?
Well, I think immediately after she said it, I think she's like, oh, I probably shouldn't have said that. And and she's like embarrassed and upset, and, you know, she tries to make amends, which I think shows that, you know, on the whole, she is a good person and she means well, and she regrets what she did and she's trying to make it better.
Yeah.
But yeah, oh gosh, it's so easy when you're just with friends, you know, say something you don't mean, or even do something, you know, there's a group of you saying, oh, let's go and throw a rock through a window or something. Not that I've ever
dramatic.
Done that, but, you know, I know.
Sophie's out there throwing rocks, guys.
Yeah. Whoops, giving away my childhood pastime, yeah. And, you know, you just you go along with it, don't you? It's very easy to just go along with what's going on around you, even if it's not who you are.
Yeah, or even in the workplace, I think as you get older, like, sometimes it's easy to get like caught up in something like what other colleagues are doing and everything, and it might not actually be the values that you hold yourself. And I think sometimes you have to do a bit of self-reflection and think, is this the person I really want to be? And I think Emma does that, and she is at heart a good person, because she's much higher in society than Miss Bates. She didn't have to go back and apologise. She didn't have to feel bad about it if she didn't want to. Let's perfectly be honest. I think it's a testament to her empathy that she does. Yeah, no, she absolutely didn't, because that would, you know, that kind of behaviour would have been going on all the time, you know. I mean, to be honest, they probably wouldn't have been going for a picnic with someone. And obviously there is the influence of Mr. Knightley, who is obviously instilled in Emma good values.
Yeah, and this sort of like, you are fortunate, you need to be nice to those who are less fortunate.
Oh man, oh my gosh, doesn't that say? I mean, we could do a whole other episode about like the qualities that you learn from the heroes, because I feel like there's so many great lessons that you learn from things that the heroes do.
Yeah, I feel like I could do the book again, but on the heroes, to be honest.
And I think Emma also shows the importance of traveling. Like, I feel like if anyone's gonna prove the importance of leaving your hometown, it's Emma, because I think traveling really does help you grow in empathy and understanding of other lifestyles and cultures. And I think that's so important when you're growing as a person. And I think a lot of Emma's issues come that she is so isolated and she's been in this small bubble her whole life.
Yeah, and Knightley recognises that and says, like, you need to get out, you know, even if it's to Box Hill, you need to get, and she has a major life lesson at Box Hill in the treatment of Miss Bates, and that's like her first trip out, you know. She definitely proves the importance of what you grow up around, and how strong an influence everything, everyone, every place around you has. And the fact that she has had one place around her is, you know, not responsible for, but definitely contributes in a long way towards the challenges and the things that Emma gets wrong.
And I think Emma also shows the importance of having somebody who can help show you a whole new world, using Aladdin quote. And I think that's new world. Literally. So you think, though, because she has Mr. Knightley who's able to open those doors up?
Yeah, no, definitely. And it's also, Knightley isn't afraid to tell Emma when she's done something that is not good. She's like, no, that wasn't good, you should apologise. You just pointing out her flaws, her faults, which obviously, you know, she teases that he does this all the time, but it's really helpful in life, because sometimes if you have got very kind of in that bubble or a bit self-centered, even without realizing it, because we can all be selfish at times, even if we think we're very selfless people. You sometimes need that outside person to go, that wasn't so great what you just said or what you just did. And I think definitely I've, like Abby, who I mentioned before, she'll pull me up if I did something that I shouldn't have, and vice versa. Like, I think you need someone that is going to do that.
Yes, I totally agree. I think that's definitely an important person to have in your life. Yeah, I feel like when it's a best friend or a partner as well, it's like, they love you, so it's like,
yeah,
you
exactly.
can take it and yeah.
It's coming from that position of love, and it's like, no, this isn't you. I don't want to see you doing this.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, so much to learn from all the heroines, all the life lessons.
Yeah, that's why Austen's so great and why she endures, I think, because she was such a good observer of human nature, and essentially human nature doesn't change.
100%. And obviously that's why your book's so wonderful as well, because like I was saying at the start, guys, this episode was inspired by Sophie's book, Be More Jane, and then obviously she has another book which is Be Your Own Heroine. So Sophie, I'll pass it over to you. If there's anything, where can people find you after this episode?
So yeah, thank you very much for the lovely comments on my books. They're available at all good bookshops, as people say, all your usual places you would expect. You can also contact me directly, and I can send out copies, and I ship worldwide. You can find me at Instagram or Facebook. They're my main social medias under Laughing with Lizzie. Or you can send me an email, laughingwithlizzie@gmail.com. I love to hear from people, so do reach out, and if you've got any further questions. Yeah.
But I've had such a good time with you, Sophie. I always enjoy chatting with you. So thank you so much for coming on the podcast.
Yeah, it's been lovely. It's nice to just have a, proper Austen chat.
I know. Not that we don't talk about Austen when we meet anyway.
Well, no, then we don't anyway, but we recorded Austen chat.
Yeah.
But and I think we've both learned some things about Fanny.
Yeah, oh my god,
so,
we've now got a new perspective on Fanny.
Who knew?
This is the thing. 2023, it's changed my whole perspective on Fanny. Here we go. Thanks so much for listening in, Janeites. If you want to find me outside of the podcast, I'm on Instagram @WhatTheAusten, which is where I house all of my Jane Austen themed content, and my account Izzy Meakin, which is my more kind of general lifestyle account. So I would love to see you over there. But for now, that's everything from me, and I will see you in the next episode.